Hello friends, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to design a simple database from the scratch. So you don't need to know any of the basics. I'm going to touch base all of the important basics that you need to get started with this database design. And in this video, we will be talking about a simple application called Expense Tracker. So it'll be useful and interesting. Come, let's get started. So friends, before we dive in, this is the GitHub link where you will find every single project that I'm demonstrating. So feel free to go through and browse whichever project you like. For this specific video, I will post the exact link of the repository in the video description itself. If you would like to follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter and GitHub, these are the links that you can click and follow me. I will be more than happy to collaborate with you, so don't forget to follow me. Now let's dive into the video. So anyone who is not aware of SQL or you do not have any setups in your local machine, I will just quickly tell you what you need to do. If you are having Windows machine, go to Google and search for SQL Server download. Okay, there are two parts. SQL Server is something, a database engine, which has to be installed on your machine to get your server up and running. After that, there is something called SSMS, SQL Server Management Studio. That's the IDE concept which you will do all of the designs. Now, when you go to this SQL Server download, there are full version for developer that's also free, and also the Express version is free. So I've downloaded the Express version. Once you download the Express version and get started with the installation step, it'll be pretty easy. Quickly do it and it will ask you to download SSMS. Either go from that wizard or you can search for SSMS download for Windows and you land here. If you download this and install, you're done with the software. So once you're done with all the installations, now open up SSMS. It will be like this and then click on Connect Database Engine. Because it's localhost SQL Server Express, this is what the server name will look like. And choose the Windows authentication. Click on the Trust Server Certification. See, I have the latest version of 20.1 SSMS, and then if I connect, it will connect to the local installed database. By default, you will not have any database. I created a database with all of the tables. That's why for me it's showing up here like this. Okay, so don't worry if it is not showing up for you. As you proceed, you will get to know how to do it. Now, before we get started with database design, who are not aware of this SQL Server, SQL is basically structured query language. That's one of the database where the data are stored in a relational concept. It's called RDBMS, Relational Database Management System, and one of the RDBMS is the SQL, which is from the Microsoft. There are other RDBMS also like Oracle and other things, but we are going to talk about SQL. So we know what is SQL. It's basically we are persisting our data in the tables format, and we are going to use the SQL Server, which is from Microsoft. Okay, this is structured query language. Now coming back to the database design, my application here in this example is Expense Tracker. So let's talk about little bit about Expense Tracker. The moment you hear about Expense Tracker, which means an application which is tracking the expense of a user. So the expense means like on your day-to-day basis, if I wanted to track my expense, I don't want it to write it in an Excel or something. I can have this kind of application where I put all of the information into as a record, and then later I can go back and check what and all I have done, right? Now, when you design a database, what you have to think is based on the application core concepts. Expense tracker means that is something that we are tracking an expense. Expense is nothing but you're spending something, you're getting some products, right? So how you have to think about this database designers, think in a broader way. So now expense tracker is the application that we know, which means like consider yourself, you are going to a shop. It could be a healthcare, medical shop, it could be a grocery shop, dress shop, anything that you do, anything you buy, that's an expense, right? So when you talk about expense, so let's quickly do something. So I'm going to take my whiteboard. Let's see. So first one that we have is expense. So our application is expense tracker, so we'll put it here. All right. So the next thing that you have to think of is we are doing some expense, so definitely there is expense related records. So there's definitely something related to expense records. So let's keep this here, and then expense will have something related to its category, like it could be a garments, it could be a grocery items. So there's something called category. All right, what else we have? And you do some expense using like you pay the expense using the credit card, debit card, and or maybe a cash. So definitely there is something called expense type, what kind of type that you do. And because we are dealing with each user, definitely there is something related to user. So we will name it as user profile, where we will save all the user information. Now we have category, we have expense, we have expense type, and then if at all you wanted to store what kind of card you used, I'm going to have something called credit card, right? It could be some card details, debit card, credit card, whatever it is. Now one more thing I wanted to do. Now a family, will be more than one person. So let's say husband wife is doing their expense individually, but then they wanted to club together as a family for a given month. So there is something that we can track as family records. So we will track this as family records. So we know now at a high level what kind of tables we want. Each table will hold their respective information. So this is how you should picture yourself based on the application. Now I'm considering very simple, like to get started with the application. The same application at the end of the video or in a separate video, I will tell you how requirements comes in and how you expand the existing application, how you expand the existing design to support the new features. That is what generally in a real-time organization you will have to go through it. So we will mimic such a similar concept. Okay, so we'll deal with only these things. Now let me open up the SSMS. What I'm going to do is I'm quickly going to bring up all the tables that I've already designed. Okay, so the moment it comes like this, it will automatically, I mean, since all the relationship has been already declared, that's why it's coming like this. Okay, so I'm gonna put it separately. I'm gonna really delete everything. Okay, so let's picture only with what the tables has. So exactly whatever I just explained, right? So expense type will have a column with a unique ID that's called expense type ID. The table name followed by ID is what generally they will put, or you can usually put just ID. It's almost same. Okay, and expense type will have some name. That's why it's expense type name. Now expense category, each expense will come under some category, right? So it could be it could be a garments, it could be grocery, medical, healthcare, it could be for anything, like even for movie, right, for entertainment. So that's why I have something called expense category ID. Again, table name followed by ID, and then it has a name, so I'm storing the name. Okay, now like I said, we are dealing with each user, so I have something called user profile, user ID. Again, same. I wanted to store display name, first name, last name, email ID, and then we are going to deal with Azure AD B2C. So I just have an extra column called AD object ID just to reference which user belongs to what. Okay, just for cross referencing. And then I have something called family ID. Basically, one user or more than, like husband wife, right? Husband wife, or even grown up kid who's going to college could also be part of the family. So let's say three people are registered as a users, but then they belong to one family. Now how do you know? So I create a family table where I record a family name. The family ID is what I'm going to give it for all the three people, which means for a given family ID, all these three people belong to one family. That's why this family ID is here. Okay, again, the next one is the credit card. I wanted to just store the last four digits of the credit card. And like if a family has using 5 credit cards, I wanted to store 5 different credit cards information here just to track which credit card has been used, so that I can pay my bill properly. And because this is a common table and we will have a lot of users, I wanted to know which card belongs to which user. I don't want to expose anybody else's cards to a different user. That's why this information is associated with the user ID column. Okay, so you got the user ID column. Now coming back to the last table, expense table, again expense amount will be there. Because an expense is associated with a category, the category ID will come here. It is again expenses associated with the expense type ID came here. For that expense you would have paid using a cash or a card, so card ID will come here. That's how these three came. Other than that, just a description and when the expense has incurred. Now coming back to the SQL, right? A important few concepts. Primary key in SQL is basically a unique key in a table which will not have null value. Okay, unique key is another concept where every single data is unique but it can have null value also. This is one of the interview questions, so be careful. Primary key will never ever have null value. It cannot have. Okay, it has to have a value but it has to be unique. Now in all of our table there will be one primary key at least. Okay, the single primary key that we have it on all these table are these IDs: expense ID, expense type ID, all these things black color you see, they're all primary keys. Now there's another concept called foreign key. Foreign key means a primary key in a table can become a foreign key in another table. The other table is called child table. Okay, now let's consider this example. Here expense type is a primary table, this is also a separate table, credit card is also a separate table, but these are belong to this tables here. So these becomes a foreign key. So this all primary key, these three are foreign key because this is a child table of these three, just because it has its primary key associated here and it is called foreign key. Similarly, you see this is primary key, you have it here, it's a foreign key, so this is foreign key. Okay, so we know now what is basic information of primary key, foreign key, and what else. I think, yeah, this is what it is. Okay, now let's go back to SQL and see how we will do it. See, for the first time if you're creating database, you can use create database name, but let's be practical. When you start developing in your own system, this is the only place you will use it. But in an existing organization, all of the database will be already there. It is very unlikely that you will end up creating your own database unless it is a really new project with everything from scratch. Okay, I haven't seen it in my last 15 years anyway. So now how do you create a table? So in order to create a table, you use create table name, and then you define the columns. When you define the columns, there are a few important things that you need to understand as a basic user. You always have a column associated with a data type followed by some constraints. So in this case, the family ID is of integer type, so I define integer. Family name is going to store the text, so I define as nvarchar and maximum of 100 characters. Okay, now so far we are good. Now let's understand the constraint. I want this ID to be auto incremented. Anything that you wanted to auto increment will have an identity column. That's why we use identity and we say 1 comma 1, which means it starts with 1 and it will have a interval of 1. So if I say 1 comma 10, then it starts, let's say 10 comma 10, it starts with 10 the ID, and then it follows by 10, 20, 30. It will increment by 10. That's what the difference. Okay, but generally depending on the project, but for us it's 1 to 1 is fine. And then there's another constraint called not null, which means you're saying you're forcing the stable record on this column. You cannot have a null column. Like when you create a entry here, you should definitely have a family name given. That's all. Now you can here itself say primary key. This one, if you can just copy and put here. That will also become a primary key. But what's the difference between having a primary key written here and separately here? The difference is when you add a constraint separately, you can name the constraint. So we're saying add a constraint to this table and the name of the constraint is pk. It's a standard primary key underscore family underscore family id. Basically the table name followed by the column name, and then you define a primary key, you specify what is the primary key. This is the right way of doing, so please follow the right way of doing the SQL scripts. Okay, do not just do something for sake of doing it. Is not going to help. By this end of this video, definitely you will have some solid basic understanding of database design and some table designs. Now let's talk about another table, right? Same thing, table, create table name, all of these column names we already spoke about. Second parameter, like the space followed by this the data type. So in this case it's an integer. All of these things we can understand, and we are also defining the constraints as not null. Okay, and what else? Again, we have two more constraints. Okay, before we come here, there's another constraint here. See, this is also a named constraint. Okay, we are saying if the display name is not given, make it as guest. So constraint name, the default is the constraint, the default is guest if you don't receive a data. Great. Now this we know we are defining a primary key. Now in order to define a foreign key, okay, we are saying constraint, a constraint name, here in this case foreign key, so that's why fk followed by this table name underscore under the next table name. The next table name is from where this is referencing. In our case it's a family table, that's why user profile is this table, family is the another table from where it is referencing. And then you define that saying foreign key, which is the foreign key here. Here is the foreign key, this one is here. Okay, and then we are saying this is referencing the table called family table. In the family table, this is the ID it is referencing. That is what this statement means. Okay, so now we know default constraint, primary constraint, second like the foreign key constraint. Now if you see rest of the thing, everything is same. So either you can create the constraints in the table, or if the table is already created, you can use alter table name and add the constraints. That is also possible. So I'm giving you some different flavors. Okay, either first time creating the table, this is possible, but let's say down the line the table is getting expanded, at that time you want a foreign key, of course you can do by using this kind of a separate script. Okay, that's called alter table script. Great. Now we also added some index. Ideally index is good to have it on a table, so it will index the data. The way you query it will be faster, but for the simple application we don't really need it. For the standard way of explaining the indexes, I have also added two more indexes here. That's what it is. And then reminding and all, it's a normal thing. We're just putting some existing data for the family table and for some expense category table, type table. Okay, so like card, cash, check. So this is what we have done. Now so let's summarize, right? So what we have done, we know how to install on the setups files like the SQL Server Management Studio, and then we learned about how you can start with the database design. Think of application and the application, what it is doing. Based on that, you visualize what kind of data you need to save it. The data that you're trying to save is what will become a table, and you can add the appropriate column names to save the data. Okay, and then we also saw how you can use the designer view to design the tables, and then this is how you use the SQL script to write the to define the tables. Okay, and once you define everything properly, if you go again to design query view, if you select everything based on the design, you can definitely see everything is added properly. Okay, its relationship is added properly automatically. Okay, so that's how it is. I hope you enjoyed this video. This is the simplest thing that I can explain for a database design from scratch. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, do let me know in the comment section, or if you are expecting more than this, do let me know in the comment section, and definitely we will be planning to make a different video for you guys for your specific need. Now, this is the fundamental thing that we are going to use for our upcoming a crash course on .NET Core 8 Web API microservices. So stay tuned. After this video, shortly the full course video will come. If you have any questions, do let me know in the comment section. I'll see you in the next video, guys. Bye bye. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more tech tutorials. And don't forget to hit the bell icon to get notified when we post new videos. If you have any questions or suggestions, leave them in the comments below. Happy coding!